All right. Hey, let's focus up here, please. Thanks for trying to do the warm up. Now, I think it's easier, and I should have showed you this yesterday. Just do it like you're used to doing, taking that C part to the other side. So when I take this 9 over, how do I take it over? Plus it, right? Add it. All right. So we're just going to have 9, and then we got to add our blank so we can. Now, what do we like A to be? What does it have to be, I guess, to complete the square? Come on. 1. 1, right? What is it right now? Negative 1. So what we're going to do, because we didn't really have one like this, that's why I use this as the warm-up. I want you to factor out this negative 1, like we did for a couple of those. We had a 2 and a 3, I think, on the homework that we had to factor out. Okay, so when I factor out the negative 1, this x squared becomes positive x squared. What happens to this 2x? What happens to this negative 2x? When I factor out the negative 1, it becomes positive 2x, right? It's still always plus blank. Okay? So there's what it looks like now. What goes in my blank? Just 1, yeah. B is 2, divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. Now, remember, over here, this was the important thing. When we factored out something on that side, if I were to go back and distribute, what am I multiplying this negative 1 times down here? The blank, right? So I have to remember to multiply my blank on the left by that same negative 1. That's the tricky part. That's the part we forget sometimes, right, Jordan? Yeah. Okay? So now I can write it in factored form because I completed the square here. So I got the negative 1 out front. The square root of x squared is x. The sign in front of the 2 is a plus. The square root of 1 is 1. And then we square it. What's on the other side right now? What's 9 plus 1 times negative 1? 8, right? Because 1 times negative 1 is negative 1, right? So it's 9 plus negative 1, which is 8. Okay, so to write it in vertex form now, we can go back to our original f of x, negative 1, x plus 1 squared. How do I move the 1 back, or I'm sorry, the 8 back over? Subtract it, right? So when I subtract the 8, I have it in vertex form now. And now you can also tell me that the vertex is what? Right, negative 1, negative 8. Remember, you look in the parentheses for the x value of the vertex, it's what makes that 0, or you can think of it as the opposite of adding 1, so minus 1, and then whatever's outside, all right?
Why is it minus 2x here?
Because I factored out this negative 1, so that made it positive 2x in there. Any other questions? So that was the last part of the worksheet we did, the back side. Any questions on the first 4 of the homework? You guys all filled in your blanks? Well, some of you just forgot. It said complete the square. It said then factor it. So just practice factoring it. Okay? And then you had to solve 5 through 10. Had a couple negatives that we had under the radicals, so I guess that this was number 10, had the I in it. Okay? 5, 6, 7, and 8 all worked out nice. Whole numbers, so we could actually find the two answers. Any questions on 5 through 10? Okay, how about 11 through 14? They were similar. The last two, 13 and 14, we had to factor out a 9 for 13 and a 2 for 14. Okay? Landry? 11? Sure. So it starts out as y equals x squared minus 4x plus 13. Okay. So just like if we were going to solve it, we would move the 13 to the other side, right? So I'm going to subtract 13 and then add my blank. My a is already a positive 1, so I don't have to factor anything out. All right? So I take half of the 4, the b, which is 2, and then I square it. 2 squared is 4. Remember, when we do the blank, it's always plus the blank. Okay? Never minus the blank. It's always plus. Doesn't matter if b is positive or negative. When you square a positive or negative, you still get a positive. That's why it's always addition. On the left side, I get negative 9. And on the right side, I can factor now because we made it one of those special trinomials. The square root of x squared is x. The sign in front of the b is negative, so that's minus. The square root of 4 is 2. Okay? Now, here's where, when we were solving, we would just take the square root of both sides, but we're not solving this. We're just rewriting it in vertex form. So all we need to do is bring the 9 back over. How do I bring it back over? Just add it, right? So it started out as y equals, so we'll write y equals again. And then we just got x minus 2 squared plus 9. So there's the equation in vertex form now. We changed it from standard form to vertex form, like we were supposed to. And the vertex is positive 2 and positive 9. Anything else on this page you want to go over? Okay. All right, you guys are doing a good job of trying, all right? Hopefully when we go over these, if you are making mistakes, you're seeing what you're doing wrong and fixing it. All right? It's okay to make mistakes. We just learn from them, right? All right, so today, this should be a review for you guys. You did this in Algebra 1. You used the quadratic formula to solve these before, right? That's what we're going to use today. So we've learned how to solve quadratic equations by graphing. Just a quick review. We graphed it in our calculator, right? And then what did we look at for our answer or answers? How did we know what the answers were when we did it graphically? See? Why are we forgetting stuff? Gotta let it sink in. Nobody remembers. Well, what does a graph of a quadratic look like? Parabola, right? What we want to do, if we're doing it graphically, you two pay attention, please, is see where it crosses the x-axis. Wherever your parabola crosses the x-axis is the answer. Sometimes it hits in 2 places, then there's 2 answers. Sometimes it hits in 1 place. Sometimes it doesn't cross. That's when we have those non-real ones. Okay? All right. The other ways we were using square roots, where we got the squared part alone, and then we took the square root of both sides. We did factoring. Once we had it factored, we set each factor equal to 0 and solved for x, and got our two answers, if there were two. And then we just got done completing the square. All right. So here's another method. We're going to use the quadratic formula. All right. So when it's in standard form, the quadratic formula might be the easiest way to do it. Okay, when I use the quadratic formula, I always put parentheses around the letters. That way my signs are never wrong. So when I put it in my calculator, I put the b in parentheses. See that, plus or minus, just like we do when we take the square root of both sides, right? And then the b squared. When b is a negative, and I square it, I still get a positive. This answer here, when I square the b, is always positive. But sometimes kids will put it in as -2 squared, and your calculator says -4 when you put in -2 squared. When you put -2 in parentheses squared, you get the right answer, which is +4. This is always -4 times the a value times the c value, all over one big fraction, 2 times the a value. All right? So that's how I do it. Now, when I put it in my calculator, I don't put the square root thing in there. I just put this b squared minus 4ac in the calculator and figure out what that is. And then I look at the square root. You know, most of the square roots we're going to have to do a factor tree for and simplify. Okay, so it's just going to give you decimal answer, and that's not what we're looking for. We want it in radical form, our answers. Unless we were doing a word problem, then we would actually find our decimal answer. Okay, but this should be reviewed for you guys. You guys have seen this before, right? Vince, you've never seen that, huh?
No.
Okay, well, now you know how to do it.
Not really.
You don't? You're going to, right? Because you're going to pay attention and focus, right?
I could try.
Good. That's all we're asking. What's the a value here? If this helps you, write it down. What's the b value? What's the c value? -5, right? We have to set it equal to 0. Very good. So the first step is subtracting 5 over so it's equal to 0. So before you can use your quadratic formula, set it equal to 0. Get everything on one side. Remember, this is in standard form. And we just plug stuff in, okay? So, Nick, why don't you plug it in for us? What? Why? Oh, are we going to start paying attention? Maybe? Let's hope so. All right, so we're going to put it in this formula. All right? So, b is 3. So, -b plus or minus the square root of b, which is still 3, squared minus 4 times a times c, all over one big fraction, 2 times a. That's all you're doing is substituting the numbers in. You don't put any variables in there, no x's, just those coefficients. Okay? So, I get -3 plus or minus. I know my denominator is going to be 2. Then I make my square root symbol. And then again, I just put the 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times -5 in my calculator, just that part. I don't use the square root symbol. All right, so just put it in using your parentheses. 3 squared minus 4, parenthesis, 1, parenthesis, parenthesis. Negative sign, remember, is down here, not the minus sign. Just do it like that. That way your signs and your answer underneath the radical sign will always be correct. All right, so we got 29. Is 29 a radical that I can break down with a factor tree? Are there factors of 29 that have a perfect square in it? No. So we're done. That's the answer. Okay? Questions? Pretty easy, right? Just substituting in. All right? So, how about me picking on Cindy? Tell me what to write.
X equals negative in parentheses 5 squared plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 in parentheses 1 and in parentheses negative.
Very good, Cindy. What's the bottom? Good. Questions? Is this making sense? So we have to make sure it's equal to 0. And then again, if this helps you, writing these on the side, you can. A equals 1, B equals 5, and C equals negative 6. Okay? You don't have to do that, but if that helps you, because some kids like to do that, nothing wrong with that. So again, negative 5 plus or minus square root over 2. And then I'm going to go 5 squared, 25. Negative 4 times 1 times negative 6 is a positive 24. What's 25 plus 24? 49, right? This is a nice number. Why? That's a perfect square. And you guys know the square root of 49 is 7. So now my answer looks like this. All right. When that happens, you get all these whole numbers, find the two answers. So we have negative 5 plus 7 divided by 2, which is 2 divided by 2. So one of my answers is 1. Then I have negative 5 minus 7, right, Collins? Yeah. Which is negative 12 divided by 2, which equals negative 6. So if it works out nice like that, I'm expecting you to find those two answers then, okay? Sometimes we'll get a negative under the radical. What do we do then? Pull the I out, right? Just simplify your radicals just like you always do. Sometimes once we simplify our radical and stuff, we'll have a number that goes into this negative 5 and this 7 and 2. They'll have a common factor. What could we do then? We could simplify that, right? We could divide that common factor into all of those. Okay, so we're going to continue to simplify our radicals and stuff. Questions so far? What am I got to do first here? Get everything on the left and what's on the right? 0. Okay, go ahead and do that one on your own. And then we'll go over it. Please.
That's all you do all day. Still got zero. Bro, I have a whole thing together. So, that's crazy. Oh.
So what are you guys getting underneath the radical?
Zero.
Zero. That's okay. That'll happen once in a while. Alright, so the first thing, we're gonna subtract 12x and add 4, right? So here's our problem. A is 25, B is negative 20, and C is positive 4. You okay with that first part? Okay. So we go x equals, man, I gotta get this thing unplugged and back in. It's not doing what I like it to do. Let's see if that works. So negative b, and b is negative 20, plus or minus the square root of b, which is negative 20 squared. Okay, again, that's what I was talking about. Some of you had negative 400 there. Okay, that is never a negative answer. That's always a positive. All right, A is 25, C is 4, over 2 times A, like that. Okay, so what happens with our negative B part? becomes positive 20, right? Because it's two negatives. And we got a 50, 2 times 25, and then square root, and then just put that negative 20 squared in parentheses, negative 20. Minus 4 times 25 times 4. And what happens is you get 400 minus 400, right? Which is 0. And what is the square root of 0? We all know. 0. So basically, it's just 20 over 50, which is 2/5. So if we were to do that graphically, the parabola opens up because A is a positive number, right? But it only hits the vertex. Actually, the very bottom of our parabola hits at 2/5 on the x-axis. Only has one answer. And that's okay to happen. All right? We got this? Do I need to go over any more examples? We understand how to substitute in. Again, my suggestion, which will help you not make any mistakes with your signs, is when you put it in your calculator, just put parentheses around the numbers that you're putting in for A, B, and C, for that B squared minus 4AC part. Then you won't mess up your signs. Okay? So, I just have more examples, but I think you guys got this. All right? So there's your assignment. You got a few minutes. You might be able to get a couple of them done.
Hopefully,